This video is in reference to my week 5 assignment for MFT 6102, and in this particular assignment I have read articles and gone through websites regarding depressive disorders, OCD, the obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety disorder, and other related disorders. I chose to watch the movie Aviator and applied the case conceptualization concept, which has certain steps in it, which I had the good opportunity to go through this book by Diane G. Hart, Competencies in Marriage and Family Therapy, or Mastering Competencies in Family Therapy. And that gave me an outline on which I proceeded and came up with the diagnosis for obsessive compulsive disorder for Howard Hughes, who's the main character in this movie. So I will start with the definition of obsessive compulsive disorder, which according to the DSM-4 is the intrusive thoughts when they become obsessive and the behavior becomes compulsive to the extent of disturbing the normal life. The normal functioning is disturbed, and the final diagnosis is established on these criteria. So basing my understanding of this disorder in context to the movie that I saw, The Aviator, which, as I just mentioned, was based on the life of Howard Hughes. He's the main character, or I would say, I'm treating him as a potential client, then he's a young man who is pursuing his passion of movie making, and this movie is actually an epic war movie, which is which in that time was a very expensive venture. But since he had this undercurrent issue of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, he just let loose all his resources and his sense of perfection, and going for the details that led to this very expensive project in the industry of filmmaking. And this movie is called The Hells Angels, and this character, or the role of Mr. Howard Hughes, is played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And I observed that he actually was able to convey this this very important hallmark feature of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is the obsession and then the compulsion which is an end result of those intrusive thoughts which are always invading the mind, and then the person starts manifesting them to kind of give some way to those thoughts. For instance, in case of Mr. Howard Hughes, it was this bar of soap he carried with him at all times and would start washing his hands repeatedly. And the flashbacks that he had with his mother, there seems to be some kind of trauma in his childhood or his family background, and the way he was raised by his mother, that this sense of these pervasive thoughts and these intrusive thoughts became a part of his psyche, and then eventually he developed, or he gave way to these compulsive habits or characteristics that were actually shown very obviously in the movie. For instance, at one point he when he's ordering for something in some chocolate chip cookies in a restaurant, he specifies like how the chocolate chip should be, I'm looking at my notes, not too close to the outside, and so these kind of little things, and then as far as his strengths. He definitely is a very passionate man. He has this ambition to make his name in the field of aviation, either through doing some very out of the ordinary flights, like going from one place to another in a certain time period, or improving upon the designs of the planes and make bigger planes and better planes. And just, he is very focused on this thing, and that is definitely a strength, that the desire to make a difference or to excel in this, in whatever field he chooses, which is of course filmmaking and aviation in his case. And the family structure that I gathered from this movie, and considering my client, Mr. Howard Hughes, of course, the mother is always in the background, and his relationship seems to, with the mother, seems to have given him this kind of edge to lead towards this development of this obsessive compulsive disorder. And then of course Katharine Hepburn plays a very pivotal role in his life. It seems like that she has this blend of humor and normalcy, and of course eccentricity also, but she's a very strong woman, and yet a very compassionate woman. So she does give him some form of stability during the time she was in his life. Other than that, the relationship of, and his playboy reputation, of course, the excessive behavior that is also showing mental disturbance, and then excess and everything related to his life. And of course the interactional pathways, as the way he deals with the senator in this particular movie regarding his role to get access to greater traveling, or whatever his goal is towards aviation. It shows strength of character there too, but he has this edge to his relationships, and he does exceed the limits, of course. So the 4 modes of treatment that I would like to apply in this case while dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder, the first one is the behavioral therapy. And the behavioral therapy, and I have to get access to my notes also. So the behavioral treatment is based on this notion that obsession promotes discomfort and compulsions reduce it. So this led to the development of this idea in the 60s and 70s that expose your client to whatever is triggering these emotions or compulsive behavior, like ERP, exposure and response prevention. So this is a form of treatment, 15 to 20 sessions of exposure on a daily basis or once a week. And then there is of course documentation, Kozek and et al. And in 2000 they all documented progress with this mode of treatment. Then we have the behavioral family treatment, where there is a participation in psycho-educational groups, documented again by Black and Blum in 1992. So and Grooms et al. 2001. So the family members that are involved, that are committed and that are not overly critical, make a much more they exert more influence and work towards better efficacy of therapy compared to those who are overly critical and non-supportive and ridicule the client. So 8 weeks long programs are available for families. Then we have a family intervention with children who have OCD. So in our particular case regarding this Howard Hughes, of course, behavioral technique could be applied. And if we had access to like this particular strong character, Katharine Hepburn, in his life, and we could just have her aid him in the process of overcoming his obsession and compulsive behavior. And so I'm just thinking in the context of this particular movie. But we, as far as family therapy is concerned, we have childhood relaxation training, parental anxiety management, problem solving training. So there's so many ways to deal with these problems. Then the third mode of treatment is the cognitive therapy, which is based on the understanding that intrusive thoughts are normal, but when they exceed a certain limit, when they are like they just bombard the brain and they become too many, too much, too heavy to deal with, then they're manifested in the form of compulsive behavior. And there's documentation with that. This is Salkovistis. That's a rather tongue twister kind of a name, 1969. But anyway, in this cognitive therapy, the Beck's model is utilized, and such questions are posed that elicit or that enable the client, the patient, to come to the realization of what is disturbing him or her, and then respond to the appropriate kind of therapy. So the identification of symptoms and the behavior and the relevant cognitive therapy reception and the overly exaggerated thoughts are examined. So 12 sessions are recommended for cognitive therapy, and they are as effective as 8 of ERP. Then finally, we have the pharmacologic treatment. Most effective are the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and the example is clomipramine. Very effective, but it's being superseded or taken over by selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And the example is fluoxetine, fluvoxamine, sertraline, and these are very effective in controlling and actually being able to exert some self-control and be able to function. But the most effectual treatment is medication combined with therapy, as it is documented by Controx et al. 1988 and Kozak et al. 2000. And in the differential diagnosis, of course, the anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, then other compulsive and related disorder, eating disorders, tics, because there are repetitive movements in compulsive behavior, so we could confuse them with that. Psychotic disorders, and even obsessive compulsive personality disorder. But based on what all that I read about this particular particular disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, Mr. Howard Hughes fits the picture, and the intrusiveness of the thought process and his compulsive behavior, his obsession with perfection, with a certain kind of thought process, it all definitely makes us just confirm the diagnosis that it is this obsessive compulsive disorder that he's suffering from. And if he had access to this medication combined with therapy, there is a good efficacy for this combined mode of treatment, and good results as documented. So my sources that I used for my coming to this conclusion and getting an understanding of this whole issue, as a website, American Psychiatric Association, edition 2013, DSM-5, OCD and related disorders, in DSM 5th edition, Arlington, VA, article Clinical Update, OCD PDF document, Stekiti G 2003, Aviator movie, and all assigned articles, websites on this for this particular assignment. Then Diane G. Hart's book, Competency, Mastering Competencies in Family Therapy, 2014 edition, and the the way this course is designed and the assignments by Dr. Bickler, I just am extremely enlightened and feel like I am gaining a lot.